everybody, Josh Gray here, Cellular Repair School with Will Agnew, who you guys should be very familiar with by now. And just to let you know, this is not an overly polished,
As a matter of fact, it was kind of spur of the moment.
This is totally spur of the moment video. Well, and what happened is we got into a heated debate and
like
talk
we
about.
We often do.
We do a lot, right? And because we're passionate about what we do.
Exactly.
And we got into this debate and we said, you know what? The things that we're talking about would be great to bring to you guys.
Exactly.
So what is today's video?
Today's video is a great video. It's what we call 80-20.
Right.
Well, it's the
80-20 rule.
Right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit and help you guys. You guys have actually probably even heard of the 80-20 rule. It's not a new concept. It's been around for quite a while.
Hundreds of years, actually. Hundreds of years, right?
But what we're going to talk about today is how it applies to what we're talking about, how it applies to business.
Right, and to the cell phone repair business specifically, right?
Right.
So to give you a little background on what the 80-20 rule is, right? It's the Pareto Rule, right? And basically there was this guy, I can't remember his exact name, but his last name was Pareto, right? And he did a survey in Italy, right? And this was a long time ago. He did a survey and he come to find out that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of his population.
Right. That was his first test. Right?
That was the first one. He was like, this is really interesting.
Right.
So he decided to take it further than that. And he started looking at other countries, right? So what he realized is no matter what country you look at, the rule was about the same. It was always about 80% owned by that 20%.
Exactly.
Right? And then it goes even further than that because they started applying to economics and finance and business. Right? And one of the things, when we were debating it, we started looking into it, and it come to find out like it applies even when it comes to wealth on this level.
Exactly.
Like, you know, if you look at the 10 richest people in the world, right?
Top 10 richest.
The top 10 wealthiest people in the world. Now listen carefully to this. So you got Warren Buffett, Carlos Slim, and Bill Gates. And those three people, right, own more than the next 7 combined.
Combined, guys.
Right? So it's the 80-20 again, right? Still, 80% of the wealth is owned by 27 or 20% of the people.
Right.
You know, so we really want to drill that down for you guys because we say it a lot.
Right.
But we really want to drill it down so you have a more understanding about what the 80-20 is. And now let's get into why we want to talk about it in the cell phone repair space.
How does it apply?
Right.
How does it apply? So that's what we're going to talk about today, the 80-20. So what we did is just help you guys hopefully understand a little bit more about what it is, how it started. Now, how does it apply to the cell phone repair space?
Right.
Well, oftentimes, guys, we get calls from people who have not been in this business. They're new to this business. And naturally, their main focus, right? In most cases, you might be one of these people listening to this, this video right now. The main focus many times is on the 20%, which is the technical aspect. It's the technical aspect of this business. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's naturally. Let's use the cake baking.
So I get crazy when I use the examples. I get really deep into it.
But it's a great example of cake baking business.
So the same thing applies, and you know, it's not that it's not important, right? But we're trying to give you some perspective. So let's look at a cake baking business, right? The very first thing you would think is, hey, if I'm going to get into the cake baking business, I need to know how to bake a cake.
I need to know how to bake a cake.
Right? So that's the first thing you think.
Right.
Realistically, you don't really need to know how to bake a cake. Right? If you learn how to run a business, you know how to hire people that know how to bake good cakes. So that's first of all. That's first. Right? That's the very first thing. Right? Now, I don't want to get too off on a tangent there.
Let's stay with the cake baking example, though.
You know, so realistically, when you think about it, okay, I need to know how to bake a cake is what the initial thought is. So you go and you become the best cake baker in your area, right?
You're an expert.
Fantastic. You make fantastic cakes. Everybody's like, man, these are the best cakes I've ever tasted. Right? But then you build a business around selling those cakes and you start to realize that the cake baking skill is just one small piece of what you really need to know.
Exactly.
It's really only 20% of the success.
It's 20%.
Because you can have the best cakes in the world, but if people don't know how to find you and you don't know how to run your business, and you don't know how to manage your business and order inventory and all of the intricacies, and believe me, I'm not even talking about, we could go on for hours about everything that needs to be done inside of that business.
Well, let's take it to the next step. What makes McDonald's McDonald's?
Right.
Is it the cheeseburger?
No, of course not. Everybody knows. And I hate to offend anybody. And we use McDonald's before. That's why I was trying to use the cake baking thing, right?
But it's all relative, right? I mean, McDonald's is McDonald's because of the 80%.
It's the systems.
It's the systems.
For them, it's all about the systems. But I didn't want to go there because I don't want to make this about systems in this conversation.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So like that's when we stay on the cake baking guy.
Let's get back to the cake.
Right. So on the cake baking guy, you open up a location, and you got great cakes.
Right.
Wolfgang Puck is down the street.
Right.
Wolfgang's got notoriety.
Right.
He's got a business that runs. Right. So you got the best cakes on the block, but guess what? You have to figure out the 80% of how you make your money.
Right.
So that's going to be, how do you market to get people in the door?
Exactly.
And getting people in the door isn't where it ends.
Right.
Because, just because your phone is ringing and people are walking in doesn't mean you're getting sales.
Exactly.
You got to have a conversion process in place too, which means that, okay, your marketing's working, because the sole job of your marketing is to get traffic into your location or on the phone.
Right.
But once that happens, your job is to convert that person to a sale, to where they're like, you know what? My mouth is watering for your cake right now.
Exactly.
I don't even want to hear about anybody else's cake. Right? I'm coming to you. That's a conversion, right? So that's two big pieces of the pie that a lot of people don't think about, right? Then it gets deeper, right? Because now what it is, you've got the cake, or you've got the order for the cake. You have to have a process for making that cake.
Exactly.
Right? So you got to have, okay, Larry's on eggs, and Jenny's, she takes care of the frosting, and what I mean? I don't know much about cakes, but
obviously, I'm
not trying to be cheesy here, but hopefully you guys understand that there's a lot of moving pieces behind it, right?
Exactly.
And that's the workflow process as far as, okay, I've taken an order, right? Because now the customers came in, the customer, when they show up, all they want to do is pick up that cake.
That's it.
Right? They don't understand what goes into the cake.
Right.
Right? So you have to have your process together to make that cake.
Exactly.
So when they show up, it's beautiful, it's ready to go, and they can have a fantastic wedding or whatever type of event they're trying to have.
Now, how does that apply to the cell phone repair business?
It's identical. Just take cell phone repair, take cake, and put cell phone repair in there.
So you need to know things like inventory management, right? POS systems,
right?
How to handle your customers, how to hire
Absolutely,
employees. All of those kind of things are
your
part
workflow.
Of your workflow.
Workflow is huge. Intake process. What is your intake process, right? What is your workflow? Because one of the things we like to talk about is, really, marketing is the huge piece, right? That a lot of people, and that's the natural thing. Once you know how to do this, the next piece that we really need to be focused on is, how do you get sales? How do you get phone ringing? How do you get people coming in? And your conversion process.
Exactly.
That's the next large piece of it, right?
Right.
But really, there's a whole process in the back end that we really want to help you fine tune, because what'll happen is constraints, right? Because what happens, okay, you get really good at, I'll go back to the cake example.
Let's go back to the cake.
Excuse me. So you go back to that. We've got some orders now. We're getting good at our conversion. We've got some orders, and it's, Jenny in there baking the cakes, and she's got, 4 orders a day, and she's able to crank those out no problem. Right? But the better she gets at that front end process of driving traffic in and converting those sales, the harder it's going to be for her. There's going to be a constraint, right? There's a chokehold in the line now, because it's going to reach a point where she's going to have more orders than what she can do on her own.
So naturally, she can do 5 cakes with her process that she currently has.
Right.
But when she starts taking on 10 cakes, where there were 5 cakes, now her process or her
it's not going to work anymore.
Not going to work anymore.
And it works the other way too, because guess what? If now you're spending all your time making cakes all day, then your marketing and your conversion process is going to fall apart. Because now you can't answer the phone, you can't deal with customers all the time, because you got to be back here making batter, filling molds, cutting, shaving, icing, and all that kind of stuff.
What happens when you can't do it?
Exactly. So the next piece of that is obviously hiring and training. And hiring and training is a whole nother ball game. Most people don't think about that sort of thing, right?
Exactly.
So
especially in the very beginning.
Right. So that's why we're really gonna. I'm gonna leave the cake thing alone now. We kind of murdered that. We murdered the cake thing. Right. But hopefully you guys get it. Replace the cell phone repair space for that, because it's identical.
Absolutely.
And again, the reason why we're doing this is because so many people tend to focus on, well, I need to know how to do the advanced repairs. I need to know how to fix phones not powering on. 20%. I need to know how to fix, SIM card not being recognized, and all of these advanced things.
Which is important.
It is, It's not, at the end of the day, when you look at the business, it's not what generates 80% of the profit.
Exactly.
Right? And in fact, we have a couple of examples here for you to kind of think about this 80-20 rule a little bit more. Right? It's the distribution. So 80% of your profits come from 20% of your customers. That's huge.
That is huge.
If you think about it. And realistically, now this business, if you're going in retail, it's going to be a little skewed, but realistically, it's the truth, because just because that customer's not coming back doesn't mean that customer's not a screaming herald for you and telling everybody, which is driving more traffic in the door. Right? That's how that rule applies. 80% of your complaints come from 20% of your customers. And we know that wholeheartedly. We don't get a whole lot of complaints here at the school, but we do get them. This is a real business. Honestly, we can't make everybody happy. And we can say out of everybody we service, it's about a 20% number. It really is.
80-20.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
and dealing with all of the different repair shops, we hear that all the time. It really is. It's 20% of the customers. Yeah. You could deal with 1,000 customers a month.
Absolutely.
And realistically, it'll be a very small percentage of those that are, pain in the necks.
Absolutely.
That cause a lot of problems for you.
That's a good statistic.
Right? Yeah. 80% of your profits come from 20% of the time you spend.
80% of your profits, 20% of the time.
Now think about that, because that means that if you're working 10 hours a day, 8 hours you're wasting every day. 2 hours every day are really
equivalent to 80% of what you're.
Yeah, they're generating 80% of what is really productive in your business.
Exactly.
That's huge.
That is huge.
I mean, that's huge when you think about it, right? 80% of your sales come from 20% of your products. Yeah. We touched on this one already, and a perfect example in the cell phone repair space is digitizers.
Right.
Realistically, 80% of the business in this cell phone repair business is digitizers, which are the glass touchscreens. Right. That's normally what's broken more than anything else. LCDs behind that, liquid damage behind that, and then charging ports is, but really that percentage continues to shrink. It dwindles smaller and smaller and smaller.
Exactly.
And when we get into the things we're talking about, a lot of those advanced repairs, that's such a small sliver of what really needs to be, or what really generates profit in the business.
Absolutely.
80% of your sales are made by 20% of your sales staff. Now, that is huge, right? Now, a lot of you guys, when you get into the business, you're not going to have a sales staff. You might already have 10 locations, something like that. So it's about converting your employees over. And if you look at this, you're going to see that the 80-20 rule applies to you, because it's true, which means if you got a 10% sales staff, or you got 10 people on sales, right? And they're generating, let's say, $100,000 a month, that means that 2 of those people are generating $80,000 a month of your profit.
That's incredible. And what is that thing you always say?
The saying.
Yeah.
The saying that ties into that I always like to say, right, is feed your tigers, whip your horses, and shoot your dogs. Right? Because your tigers are the ones that are going out there making it. The horses are necessary. Right? Because they're the ones that carry on the day-to-day stuff. So they're necessary. Right? And the dogs are the ones that are dragging the whole organization down. So definitely feed your tigers. Yeah, and remember, like they said on the Hangover, tigers love pepper, but they don't like cinnamon.
They hate cinnamon.
That's cheesy, man. But one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to talk about this is because it's about focus for people. Right? So where we want you guys to be spending your time focusing is anytime you're doing something in your company or in your whatever it is that you're working on. You got to step back from it and look at a big picture and say, is what I'm working on going to generate 80%? Or is this the 20%? Because if you're focusing on the wrong thing, then I'm not saying there's certain things that are necessary. You're going to have to do.
You got to pay the bills.
Right? Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's certain non-revenue producing activities that have to be done. Checking the mail. Cutting checks.
But the key is, you just don't want to spend too much time doing it.
Right, absolutely. You want to learn how to streamline that stuff down, get it done quickly, so you can spend, you as the business owner, you watching this video, you're the one that want to make sure you're blocking the time out to be focusing on that 20% that's going to generate the lion's share of your revenue, your profits, your productivity, your systems, and all that sort of thing.
That's a very important concept, guys. I hope we are really coming through with what we're trying to communicate to you guys, because this is a very important concept, and this is something we see a lot of times. Is the problem for newbies a lot of times, that, and even people that we haven't taught, even people that have come from other facilities.
And in fact, it's a crazy thing, because I think the industry is starting to gain a little more notoriety. So people are starting to know that there's something out here in the cell phone repair space. But we are starting to actually retrain students that went to other locations. Because realistically, there's other schools out there. I'm sure you guys know who they are. We're not going to say any names out there. I can say this. There's one other school out there that does really good technical training. Right? They do good technical training. And in fact, we tend to retrain a large amount of their students. And in fact, their students have been coming to our students asking for jobs lately, which is weird. But what that is because they're learning the technical. And once they get out and they start doing all the technical and they're doing this and they're getting $15,000 in sales and 16 to 17 and 18,000, they figure out, I'm not making any money. I can't keep this going. Am I going to do this forever to just pay myself? This is not what my dream was, right? And that's what it is you got to really determine what your dream is. And most people get into this business, the dream is to create a lifestyle. It's, the dream isn't about the money. The dream is about something else.
Absolutely.
You know, whether it's freedom, whether it's time, whether it's, you know, opportunity, whether it's being your own boss.
It's whatever's value.
You know,
the value is yours. I mean, it's
right.
you own the value.
Right.
Whatever that
and
is
a
for
thing
you.
that people usually say is, well, my dream is to work for myself.
Exactly.
You know, but that's Pandora's box. You got to be careful about.
Yeah.
Because when you work for yourself, your boss is going to be the worst boss you've ever had. You know, because guess what? You have to show up. You have to get things done. You know, but if you systemize things and you focus and you really learn and you implement this 80-20 focus,
right.
you know, then you start to really understand you're building a business that doesn't require you to work like, you know, a madman or a mad woman
exactly.
all the time in the business,
exactly.
right? One of the things I like to talk about too, our next video that we're going to be creating, and really guys, what we're going to do for you is we hopefully find this sort of thing value added. You know, we have these heated debates and discussions in our corporate meetings all the time.
Yes.
And it's feedback we get back from our sales staff that we take back to corporate, and we talking about hot topics and ways to solve problems for you guys. And like this video, we're sitting in our office. Right. It's totally an impromptu video today.
Yeah.
You know, and we just said, hey, this is such a hot button, and we know that if we can start to gear your mind around thinking larger than just the 20%, just
right.
that, you know, just the technical side of things,
right.
you know, that you're going to be that much further ahead in the process of building your business.
Right.
So one of the next videos that I'm planning on that I want to do is the 7 stages of success, 7 stages of business success, because every business has a life cycle.
Right.
And this goes really deep. We're actually going to do some really in-depth training on this, but every business has a life cycle, whether it's, you know, in the dream stage where you're figuring out and you're planning and you're spreadsheeting and you're goaling and you're budgeting,
right.
you know, but it's not real, right? And once you take it to the next level where you actually earn $1, it moves to the next stage. Right. So there's this whole stage of businesses, and the sad thing is most businesses never move out of stage 3. In fact, the transition from stage 2 to 3 kills most businesses,
right.
because stage 3 is all about hiring and delegating work.
Which is what a lot of people aren't focused on.
Right, because they're focused on making the best cake, which is important, right?
It's important.
And another analogy, just to really drive it home, is foundation on a home, right? It's important. The foundation's important, but the foundation in and of itself isn't going to do you much good.
Right.
It's going to rain on you.
It's going to rain on you.
You know, you're going to have to deal with the elements out there.
Exactly. And on the other hand, the house without the foundation.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah, it's going to be rickety. If you got you got beautiful walls and beautiful shutters, but there's no foundation, it's not going to hold up.
Yeah. So you need both. It's all
absolutely.
It's all
absolutely you do. So it's important. I don't want to say that it's not.
Yeah.
Right. But what we're really trying to get you to do is think bigger and start to understand that if you choose Cellular Repair School, or if you have chosen Cellular Repair School, you already start to see this. Right. But we're going to give you the technical. But one of the things that we want you to understand is that's not the end all be all.
Right.
Right. That's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what we really need to get into to be successful in this business, to be profitable, and to really be achieving what it is that you want to accomplish.
Exactly. And like we said, it's understandable that you guys may, want the technical and, need the technical and only have questions about technical aspect of this business. But what we've seen, and we see this continuously over and over and over and over, is guys who really go out there and they really implement the things that we teach them, and they really learn. They have different questions 6 months down the road than they have
every single time.
And those questions revolve a lot around what Josh has talked about. Those questions of inventory management, those questions of intake, those questions of employees, those questions of, all of the 80%, the business aspect of things. And if you guys don't understand that and you don't have a grip around that, you're really playing behind the 8 ball. Because you're going to get to a point where you're going to top out and you're going to hit a ceiling,
right?
And you're not
going
to
start pulling your hair out because you're like, I can't come up with a solution. I can't figure out how to do anything more than this.
Exactly.
And that number is going to be different for everybody.
Exactly.
For someone, that number could be $10,000 a month.
It could be 10 a month.
For another person, it could be 15. Another person could be 50,000 a month.
It could be 5.
It just depends on how how ahead of time you started to develop your business.
Right.
But what we see time and time again is that people who, especially people who go to other training centers, is that they build their business solely focused on that technical piece.
Yes.
Another analogy I like to talk about is from where you're at now to a destination, right? Let's say you're trying to get from Florida to California.
Right.
And you're going at night.
Right.
It's pitch black. That's what building a business is. It's pitch black.
Yeah.
You can't see where you're going.
You can't see. You don't know. You can't see the
You have no clue. You can't see. But what you do see is you see your headlights. You can see about 20 feet ahead of you.
Exactly.
And that's all you need to know is that the road you're traveling is safe. But if you did your proper preparation and you've mapped it out in your mind, you know, hey, when I get up here to Interstate 80,
right,
I'm gonna head east on Interstate 80.
Exactly. You don't have to see it.
You don't have to see Interstate 80, but you
it.
know, I know it's Interstate 80. I know what it looks like.
Absolutely.
So once I see it, I know that that's my next exit
Right.
to take me on the next direction of where I want to go.
Exactly.
And it's identical when it comes to your business development.
Exactly.
Identical.
Exactly. That's a good example. I like that example.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the truth.
Yeah, it is the
truth. It's
truth.
the truth,
So
realistically.
Guys, that is the 80-20. I hope what we've delivered to you guys today and talked about with this 80-20 rule and how it applies to the cellular repair business or any business for that matter. But really, I know you guys are focused on the cellular repair business. So I hope what we've shared to you today has really hit home and you understand exactly what we're trying to do and what we're trying to communicate around this 80-20 and how that impacts your decision from the beginning to the middle to the end. I mean, even when you start to pick your training, how that 80-20 really applies. And when you get into your business, how that 80-20 continues to apply. And throughout the rest of your business or any business for that matter, how that 80-20 applies. The examples that Josh has given you are just great examples, from baking the cakes to a lot of the bullet points.
Yeah, we've been all over the place.
We've
house building and taking road trips.
And,
Yeah.
and the thing is taking road trips. But the thing is, we really want to drive that concept home because what we see, right? We've been entrepreneurs
time and time again.
You know, all our lives, right? And what we see is that a lot of people who are new to the entrepreneurial business or taking on new endeavors in the entrepreneurial space, there's a learning curve in understanding what's important.
Right.
And what's not as important. Right?
Absolutely.
Not that it's not important.
Right.
But it's not as important.
It's not going to get you the results that you're really achieving for.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about results, whether it's financial results, whatever that result is
Whether
for
it's
you.
freedom, time,
Yeah, exactly. It's always about result. So you always, anytime you're doing things, you always got to be results motivated and results oriented.
Exactly. So 80-20.
That's what it is. So that's today.
That's today.
Be on the lookout.
What are we talking about tomorrow or the next time? What are we arguing?
The 7 stages. If you found any value in this, you're going to be blown away on the 7 stages.
Exactly.
And I love the 7 stages because, you know, as we talk about it, it really opens your mind up because you start to you're able to identify other businesses and really see where they're at in the stages of their business.
Right.
And to be honest with you, and that's 7 stages, and not every business is going to be a 7-stage business. And your goal might not be stage 7. You'll know more about it when we lay out what it is. So I'm just trying to whet your appetite a little bit.
It's always great, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's always great to be able to identify what stage a business is in.
Absolutely.
Because especially if you're in business. Because then you can say, hey, they're in stage 4, I'm in stage 3.
Right, exactly. So what they're doing some things, They're doing some things that I know it was difficult to get to that stage.
Right.
So let me look at their business a little bit more to see if I can get ideas from that business to implement in mine to help me get to the next stage.
Exactly.
You know, and one of the other reasons why it's so critical, you know, everything we do from the 80-20 to the 10 commandments to now the 7 stages, it's all about identifying yourself where you're at because this entrepreneurial dream will test you. It will test you.
Yes.
You know, so it's always good to make sure that you can step back and see the big picture.
Right.
And see hey, this is all of this crazy stuff with my employees going crazy over here, or not even if you're not having employees at that stage yet. With me, like I'm like a mad person. I got 100 calls coming in, and I got people walking in, and I got 20 phones on the desk. I got 80 on the rack.
Right.
You know, you understand that that's normal for that stage of the business.
Exactly.
Right? Because then you can say, you know what? It's not just me. This is normal. So let me step back. Let me get with my CRS team and let's develop processes. Let's really look at this thing and break it down and help me figure out how to handle this, how to improve it, and how to systemize things so I can move to the next step.
Exactly. And if you're only focused on that 20%, you might think this is something that I can't do.
Right.
And that's the thing. You never want to limit yourself with only being focused on the 20% because that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to limit yourself, and you may even end up saying, you know what, that's just something that I can't do.
Right.
You know, and you never want to put yourself in that position where you're
never, not as a business.
Not as a business.
Not as a business. As a person, I can say that. But as a business needs to be all things to all people.
Exactly.
You know, but we know as humans we can't be all things to all people. But a business has to.
It has to be.
You know, or dies.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. All right.
So that's all I got for you guys today.
That's all we got today, guys.
You know?
And we'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Josh, I enjoyed it.
I always do. I always do. Hopefully you guys got value out of it.
Right.
You know, and you know who it is. This is Josh Gray.
This is William Agnew.
Cellular Repair School.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you soon.